TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israel's Central Elections Committee Chairman, Judge Uzi Fogelman, has presented President Reuven Rivlin with the official March 23rd election results. A biannual international donors conference concluded in Brussels yesterday, aimed at raising financial support for UN-led humanitarian efforts for what the world body classifies as Syrian refugees. Intelligence officials tell TV7 that while there's no way for aid organizations to thwart Jihadist groups from laying claim to goods entering Syria's Idlib Governorate, hundreds of thousands of civilians are faced with real humanitarian distress. Israel's Central Elections Committee Chairman, Judge Uzi Fogelman, presented President Reuven Rivlin with the official March 23rd election results this morning. In a joint press conference at the President's residence in Jerusalem, Judge Fogelman asserted that all claims of irregularities were successfully dealt with and labeled the results to be a clear reflection of the vibrant opinions shared among Israel's diverse society.
תוצאות הבחירות נקבעו על ידי אזרחי ישראל שיצאו להצביע, בחרו את נציגיהם לכנסת ה-24 ונתנו ביטוי להשקפותיהם השונות והמגוונות. כל זאת חלק מהשיח הפתוח שמאפשר את הדמוקרטיה הישראלית שבה אנו גאים.
President Reuven Rivlin, for his part, highlighted the complicated situation in which Israel finds itself.
עוד לא יצאו 7 שנים לכהונתי כנשיא, וזו הפעם החמישית שבה אני מקבל את תוצאות הבחירות לכנסת, הרביעית בתוך פחות משנתיים. אין צורך לתאר את הסיטואציה המורכבת הזו שבה נמצאת החברה הישראלית והפוליטיקה הישראלית. אך אל לנו לשכוח שמערכת הבחירות לכנסת היא סממן ממלכתי עליון, השוכן בקודש הקודשים של הדמוקרטיה שלנו. זהו האמצעי המובהק ביותר של הציבור להשמיע את קולו ולבחור את נבחריו. ומשכך אין להקל ראש בגודל השעה.
The Israeli head of state continued by highlighting his principal consideration in choosing a candidate for the purpose of forming a viable coalition.
שלאחר ההתייעצויות עם סיעות הכנסת, השיקול המרכזי שינחה אותי בבחירות, בבחירת המועמד עליו אטיל את מלאכת הרכבת הממשלה, הוא סיכוייו של חבר הכנסת שיבחר על ידי להרכיב ממשלה שתזכה לאמון הכנסת. ממשלה שתשכיל לאחות את הקרעים בינינו ולשקם את החברה בישראל, חברה שספגה מכה קשה ביותר בצל מגפת הקורונה. החברה הישראלית זקוקה לממשלה שתעביר תקציב המדינה, שתוביל דרך של ריפוי המערכות והאזרחים שנפגעו, ותחלץ את מוסדות המדינה מהקיפאון הפוליטי אליו נקלענו, דווקא ברגעים שבהם אזרחי ישראל זקוקים כל כך למוסדות מדינה יותר מכל.
President Rivlin concluded his speech by urging the recently elected Israeli representatives to hear the public's appeal to put aside their differences at a time when the Jewish state is faced with numerous social and economic challenges.
המשבר הפוליטי שמטלטל אותנו אמנם פוגע ומחליש במידה מסוימת את הדמוקרטיה שלנו, אבל הוא לא יוכל לה. אנחנו והדמוקרטיה שלנו חזקים ממנו. החברה הישראלית חזקה ממנו. כולי תקווה שנבחרי הציבור ישכילו לשמוע את העם בישראל, ישכילו לשמוע את תביעתו לחיבורים לא שגרתיים, לשיתופי פעולה חוצי מגזרים, לעבודה עניינית ומסורה למען אזרחי ישראל. אנחנו נבחן זאת בסבב ההתייעצויות הצפוי להתקיים כאן, בבית הזה, בקרוב מאוד, ביום שני הבא.
President Reuven Rivlin will now hold his consultations with representatives of the 13 parties elected, after which the task of forming a government would be assigned to one of the candidates by Wednesday, the 7th of April. And while Jerusalem's political echelons are squabbling amongst themselves for the task of forming Israel's next government, despite analytical projections pointing to mounting prospects of a fifth round of elections being forced upon the Jewish state, unless an out-of-the-ordinary coalition would emerge, everyday Israelis are seizing the opportunity to joyfully exploit the recent easing of the outgoing government's COVID-related restrictions.
Look, today it's beautiful. It's just something that, we've been waiting for a long time. We've gone through 3 lockdowns now. There's always a 4th lockdown hanging over us. But, for now, we're enjoying freedom. We're enjoying being out in the sun and just, waiting to go to the beach. And summer is just around the corner. So we're all very excited. But it does feel good. And it's a little bit deceiving, but it feels great. I mean, things are not going to be normal so quickly, but it's the sense of normal that feels good.
We feel pretty good now that everything seems to start opening. It's been a long time since we went outside the entire family, and it feels like we're coming back to life. It's very good. The kids had enough at home. They want outside.
Turning to the Belgian capital, Brussels, where a biannual international donors conference aimed at raising financial support for UN-led humanitarian efforts for what the world body classifies as Syrian refugees has managed to allocate a total sum of 5.3 billion euros, equal to approximately $6.4 billion.
I have the privilege of announcing the total pledge from this year's Brussels conference for Syria. The total pledge amounts to 5.3 billion euro, or 6.4 billion in US dollars, of which for 2021, 3.6 billion euro, or 4.4 billion in US dollars in grants, of which for 2022 and beyond, 1.7 billion euro, or 2 billion US dollars in grants.
Alongside the 5.3 billion euros allocated, international financial institutions and donors have further pledged 5.9 billion euros, equal to roughly $7 billion in loans for Middle Eastern countries hosting Syrian refugees. The second largest donor at yesterday's conference was the European Union's institution.
I am proud to announce that the European Union is reconfirming its pledge, the same amount made as last year's conference for 2021, and that we are displedging an equal amount from the European budget for 2022, 560 million euros. Once again, I would like to ask for generous pledges at today's conference, so that we can somewhat alleviate the suffering of the Syrian people.
The biannual pledge by the European Commission, which amounts to 1.12 billion euros, equal to 1.31 billion US dollars, was made in addition to separate pledges by EU member states, which amounted to a total of 2.6 billion euros, of which Germany made the largest contribution of all, with 1.738 billion euros. Other pledges included $596 million from the United States, 205 million British pounds from the United Kingdom, and $100 million from Qatar. Meanwhile, at a United Nations Security Council session, Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Mark Lowcock voiced his conviction that the humanitarian aid procured by the funds allocated at the biannual conference for Syria does not fall into the hands of terror organizations.
The UN cross-border operation is one of the most heavily scrutinized and monitored aid operations in the world. That is because the people paying for it, who are mostly Western and Gulf donors, have been clear that they will only do so if they are sure the resources are not being diverted to terrorist groups. Because this program is so well monitored and scrutinized, we know aid gets to the people it's supposed to.
The voiced assurance by the UN Under-Secretary General raises numerous questions, with intelligence officials who spoke to TV7 pointing to the fact that in recent weeks alone, dozens of trucks with humanitarian aid entered Syria's northwestern Idlib Governorate, which is controlled by numerous jihadist organizations, including most notably by Tahrir al-Sham, which has direct ties to both the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. That being said, while there is no way for humanitarian organizations to thwart the jihadist groups from laying claim to the goods entering the besieged territory, hundreds of thousands of civilians are faced with humanitarian distress. Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to lift up Syria once more in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brothers and sisters around the world, in addition to our ongoing prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and the salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Heston, wishing you an Erev Tov ve'Chag Pesach Sameach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.